Hey, what's up, guys? My name's Mark Furru. I'm 40 years old. I live on the space coast of Central Florida, and I'm also a lifelong music nerd. I listen to all kinds of stuff, but mostly rock and metal and alternative and that sort of thing. I've seen guys that are older than me, that are younger than me, and the same age as me, making these videos, especially right now that the year is almost over. So I figured, why not I try to get in on this action as well? This would be my first real video doing this, so I'm going to list my top 10 albums of 2022. Alright, at number 10, we're going to Sweden with the long awaited new album from Meshuggah. It's called Immutable. It's their first album since 2016's Violent Sleep of Reason. It's also their first album on their new label, Atomic Fire, after spending their whole career on Nuclear Blast Records until now. In case you're not familiar with Meshuggah, they're definitely a real brutal metal band, harsh vocals and all that. You could call them progressive metal, you could call them technical death metal, groove metal. They're also considered pioneers of a relatively new subgenre of metal called Djent. That's Djent. This new album is amazing. It's not breaking any new ground for them, really. It's just Meshuggah being Meshuggah. But I love that. And whether you're a huge fan of Meshuggah or a fair weather fan of theirs, or you've never heard of them before, this is worth checking out. Okay, at number 9, unfortunately, this is the one album on my list that I do not yet own a physical copy, but I've had it on repeat on my Spotify all year long. It is self-titled From Pike versus the Automaton. This is a solo project of Oakland-based singer and guitarist Matt Pike from the doom metal bands Sleep and High on Fire. It's basically High on Fire's thrash doom hybrid sound with a little bit of experimentation and some acoustic swamp rock as well. It's amazing. It really is. If you like High on Fire or Sleep, this is worth checking out. And it saddens me that I have not seen this on anybody's list yet this year because it was absolutely amazing. Alright, number 8, we're going to Canada with the latest one from Quebec's Voivod, Synchro Anarchy. Voivod emerged 38 years ago with their debut album War and Pain in 1984, which was a straight up thrash album, but they've eventually gotten more progressive throughout their career. Unfortunately, their original guitarist Dennis Piggy D'Amour passed away in 2005 from cancer, but they didn't let that stop them. They kept going. Their current guitarist Chewy is amazing in his own right as well. Their vocalist Snake is really good. Their drummer Away is one of the greatest drummers in metal history. I don't know the bass player's name on this album, unfortunately, but it's, in my opinion, their best album since their 1989 album Dimension Hatros. Number 7, we're going to England right now with the latest from Venom Prison. This is called Erebus. Venom Prison, you could call them deathcore, you can call them metalcore. They're kind of like a cross between Arch Enemy and Lamb of God. Their front woman is a Russian immigrant named Larissa Stupar. They did have to postpone their tour in support of this album as she and her husband just had a kid. Their son was born earlier this year. But this album is brutal as hell, as were their last 3, but it's got a lot more musicianship to it, in my opinion, than their last 3 albums. This is the first one. I like their last 3 albums, but I love this album, and it was my number 1 for quite a while when it first came out. back in it's February or March, I don't remember, but anyhow, at number 6, Rashomon from Ibaraki. This is a side project of Matt Heafy from Trivium and former Emperor frontman Isan. It's basically a Japanese samurai equivalent to like Norwegian Viking black metal. It does have elements of black metal and as well as Heafy's usual metalcore sound that he's got with Trivium. There's some guests on here as well, including Gerard Way from My Chemical Romance on one of the songs. So it's kind of experimental. It's amazing. It really is. I can't pronounce any of the song titles because they're in Japanese, but the lyrics are in English, and yeah, it's a new, different musical side from Matt Heafy, for those of us that are used to hearing him in Trivium. At number 5, the long-awaited new album from Dave Mustaine and Company and Megadeth, The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead. Megadeth emerged 37 years ago with their debut album, Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good, and they ended up being considered one of the big 4 alongside Slayer, Anthrax, and my personal favorite, Metallica. It is the longest gap between albums from Megadeth, but in addition to having to delay things due to COVID like everybody else, Dave Mustaine also battled throat cancer, but he survived it. His singing and his snarling are as gnarly as ever. This is not as good as their last album, Dystopia, from 2016, but it is still quite good. It's not my number 1 album like I thought it was going to be, but it's still very solid. I've listened to it God knows how many times already since it came out on September 2nd. My number 4 is an album that came out just a week after The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead. It's the new one from Ozzy, Patient Number 9. This is easily his best solo album since Down to Earth in 2001. It is also a star-studded event with guests like his former Black Sabbath bandmate Tony Iommi, as well as Zakk Wylde, Robert Trujillo, Chad Smith from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, the late great Taylor Hawkins from the Foo Fighters, Eric Clapton, and Jeff Beck. It's not the heaviest solo album Ozzy has ever had. It's not like Blizzard of Oz, Diary of a Madman, or No More Tears, which is my favorite album of his. But it's still a very solid album. Still really good songs that make me happy when I listen to them, even if they're not the happiest songs ever written in existence. But it's an amazing album, and I'll be listening to it over and over for years to come. Alright, at number 3, this is a band that's very new to me. I literally didn't even hear of this band yet, less than 3 months ago. They're a Philadelphia-based band called Ruby the Hatchet. You could call them stoner rock, you can call them doom metal, you can call them occult rock, whatever. They got a beautiful, sexy front woman, Jillian Taylor, who has an amazing voice. You could say they're like a cross between Black Sabbath and Fleetwood Mac, Heart, Blue Oyster Cult, and Ghost, as well as the German/Swedish band Lucifer. I'm sorry, I forgot to say the name of the album. The name of the album is Fear is a Cruel Massacre. It is their 4th album. I heard their other 3 after I heard this one. Those are really good too, but this one is their best one yet, I think. And I hope more and more people will check these guys out. Ruby the Hatchet. I didn't see them on anybody's list in the music publications that I read or on any of the other videos on YouTube. I really think people need to check this out. It's amazing. Alright, runner-up, number 2. We're going to Oakland, California. This is the second time in this video going to Oakland, California, as that's where Matt Pike of Pike vs. the Automaton, High on Fire and Sleep is based. Alright, but this is the new album from Machine Head of Kingdom and Crown. Kings of groove metal Most people still think their debut album, Burn My Eyes from 1994, is their best. It's still one of my favorites. It was dethroned for me a decade later through the Ashes of Empires, their fifth album, but this is quite up there with those two, as well as their 2007 album, The Blackening, is one of the band's best. It is harsh, it is melodic, the musicianship is there, the songwriting is there, the amazing lyrics are there. Rob Flynn is a hell of a storyteller, too. If you've been a fan of Machine Head, this needs to be heard as soon as possible. Trust me. And finally, my number one. We are going to Sweden for the second time today. This band have been on a roll for the last 12, 13 years or so. They are sort of controversial, as especially their earlier music, they had a lot of sacrilegious overtones. I don't think they're really Satanist. I think they're just doing it for shock value, like Slayer and Marilyn Manson, Cradle of Filth, and everybody else that came before them, Rob Zombie, Black Sabbath, Nine Inch Nails, whatever. It is the new album from Ghost, Empira. Like the last couple of albums, their lyrics, thankfully for me, as I am Catholic, are moving further and further away from Satan and talking about other topics such as political corruption, which is more relevant today than ever, unfortunately, with the way things have been going in this country and what Russia's been doing to Ukraine and all this other stuff. But it is a great album. It mixes their original occult rock doom metal sound with some like 80s rock and pop influences and a little bit of contemporary pop influences as well. They are not selling out though. This is a great album. This songs are really good. I couldn't stop listening to this when like the first month or two after it came out. It is my favorite album of 2022, and I'll be listening to it over and over for years to come. So let's recap. My number 10 was Immutable from Meshuggah. My number 9 was a self-titled from Pike versus the Automaton. My number 8 was Synchro Anarchy from Voivod. My number 7 was Erebus from Venom Prison. My number 6 is Rashomon from Ibaraki. My number 5 was The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead from Megadeth. My number 4 is Patient Number 9 from Ozzy Osbourne. My number 3 was Fear is a Cruel Master from Ruby the Hatchet. My number 2 was Of Kingdom and Crown from Machine Head. And my number 1 was Empira from Ghost. Well, if you've stuck with me so far at this point, I thank you very much. This is my first video doing this. I don't have a donation link or anything like that. This is all new to me. I'm not like Pete Pardo or Brennan Snyder or any others like that. I'm nowhere near that level yet. Hopefully at some point I will be. If you guys watch and support my channel. Once again, I'm Mark Furru. In case I don't make another video before then, I hope everybody has a Merry Christmas, a Happy Holiday, and a Happy New Year. And until next time, mahalo.